Hey y'all, how's it going? It's Bonnie Violet. I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain. And in case you don't know where you are at Dragon Spirituality, Gender Diverse, as part of our 12-week summer series. This is actually the 11th of 12 of the series, so we just have one more week next week in which we will have Veronica Electronica. I did lie just a little bit, only because last week we ended up needing to reschedule just in case. And so we're actually going to do their show this Sunday, October the 2nd at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you can check out the links in the description to see where that's at or go to the YouTube page. Yeah, and I wanted to take a second to do like kind of the final, it won't be the final, but invite folks to the Dragon Spirituality Summit, which is a sponsor of this particular series. The Dragon Spirituality Summit is taking place actually next week in Chicago in person, the 7th, 8th, and 9th. If you can't be there in person, we do have virtual participation. Will be live streamed on YouTube. So there are ways that you can interact with us and participate with the summit if you are unable to make it in person. So we'd love to have you join. Go to our website, dragonspirituality.com, to register now. Except for another one of those things is our registration page, the program that we use. They decided to go down for a few hours, and it's now been a day. But just keep going back to the registration page, and as soon as it's up, you'll be able to register. So don't fret. You'll be able to register at any point in time. So just as soon as that little button works. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and bring on my guest here this evening. I'm really excited. I'm actually currently in Chicago. I was trying to get the skyline, which is really gorgeous, but lighting, nighttime, didn't quite go as I had planned. But I just moved to Boise not that long ago, and I've made it a new friend, and I'm excited to have them on the show tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on Frida Nightz.
Hi, hey everybody.
Hey,
Hi, sis.
how are you?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad to see you. I've missed you not
I
being
know,
there.
I know I've missed you too. I was gonna say I can see like through the window, like right behind you, and I think it looks beautiful. So
Yay.
the lighting doesn't even matter. As long as I see those beautiful buildings, it looks great.
Right, right. It's quite amazing. Chicago, I lived in Chicago for years, but I never like really stayed in the city area, and so like where all the buildings are and stuff. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it looks so awesome. Thank you so much for having me, by the way. This is the glam for
All
the
right,
evening is this rhinestone hat because she's looking butch today. So we'll leave
right.
it at that.
Butch realness. Hey,
Yes,
whatever
butch
works.
realness for real.
Awesome. Do you want to introduce yourself just a little bit more, just kind of like name where you're at, that sort of thing, and then we'll get into the conversation?
Sure. So my name is Frida Nightz. I am a Mexican American drag performer here in Boise, Idaho. I have been doing drag for a little over 4 years now, and I'm also the current reigning winner of our local competition, Boise's Next Drag Superstar. And I am also a sober queen, and I consider myself a dancing queen and a trick queen. And I like to use my drag to make our community feel empowered and to send the message of self love and fierceness. So that's who I am.
Awesome. That's a great way to get us started. Um, my first question is I always like to hear a little bit about your childhood or your younger years, if you will, in particular, kind of your exposure to spirituality and what your experience was with that.
Sure. Oh, and just to throw it out there, my pronouns are now they, she.
All
In case
right.
anyone was wondering. Thank you so much for asking me that question. So, so as a child, spirituality, I think it wasn't a word that I knew literally because my first language is Spanish. But I do know that, so I was raised by two queer lesbian women, Mexican immigrant lesbian women, when I was born and grew up here in the United States. And I remember, my mom was very butch presenting, and so was her partner at the time. And we would go to church. We would go to Catholic church. I was raised Catholic. And I did I was baptized when I was a baby. So she wore her first dress, at a few months old. And I went to, I guess, what you would consider Sunday school to do my first communion. And we had to, read verses out of the Catholic, like version of the Bible, and it was all in Spanish. So, as I got as I grew older, like maybe, 8, 9 years old, I just remember I always questioned, why did we go to church? And why do I hear all these things about, church people discriminating against queer people? It's really confusing. And I remember asking my mom, I'd say, "Hey mom, why did I grow up going to church? And, why are we doing it if, all these people were mean to us?" And she told me, "The reason that I wanted you to go to church was so one, you could learn to read and write in Spanish, your first language, because
Mm,
there weren't any preschools. I grew up in Oregon before I moved to Boise, and there weren't any preschools that were teaching that to bilingual children. And two, I wanted you to have a good sense of spirituality, and I wanted
mm,
you to have a good sense of faith in whatever it is that you decide to believe." So that's been, my experience with spirituality. And I'm grateful for, my mom, passing that down to me. And it had nothing to do with religion, obviously. So that's sort of the history that I have with it.
mhm. And so
Yeah,
so how long did you go to Catholic church with your mom, until, like, what age?
I think it was up until I was 12 years old is when I sort of stopped going. I think
Mhm,
the reason why is um, it was when we moved to Boise, and we were still trying to get to know the community. And I think that at that point, it was more like personal life circumstances. My mom was just trying to, survive and ensure that I was doing okay in school. And that was, and that's how, that's sort of when I stopped going to church. And I was actually also coming into my queerness and starting to wear makeup and be more femme presenting, and that was really difficult. So, especially, going to church. So my mom was like, maybe we shouldn't go right now, especially here in Idaho."
mhm.
So that's just, it's sort of the things that we have to deal with growing up queer.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I guess you would say that it was almost, it would almost limit my access to even more opportunities to explore spirituality, and it did. Eventually, I haven't got stepped foot into a church um, since then. So,
Mhm. Yeah, well, and do you wanna talk a little bit about what that was like? You were kinda talked about wearing makeup as a 12-year-old? Do you wanna talk,
hmm
and then that kinda kept you from going to church, but it sounds like you still went to school. How was that experience for you?
oh gosh, it was a really interesting experience. I remember the first time that I went out with a full face. I got into the car and my mom was like, "Frida, why are you wearing so much makeup? It is so obvious. I am so worried." So it freaked my mom out more than it freaked me out.
Mhm.
I felt beautiful. I would put this on and say, "Wow, this is something very like special and different." And I love the way that I look, and I like the way that it makes me feel. At school, I did it from like seventh grade all the way up to ninth grade. I would just get, like my fellow students, would just stare at me. I did have a good little group of like friends that I would hang out with, so I wasn't bullied too harshly. But kids would make remarks and things like that and ask questions. So it was interesting. It was educational
Mhm.
because I learned that for some reason, some other kids have a problem with this, and I don't get why, but I didn't have
Right.
a problem with it, and that's all that mattered.
Right, you were enjoying it, and who cares what anyone else thinks?
hmm
Yeah, yeah. That's great. I mean, I remember, like, I'm a little older than you, but I remember doing some talking in schools, and I couldn't, at the time, I was talking about having HIV, but I wasn't allowed to say that I was gay or queer during that time, and so it was really interesting, and it's great to see that it's changed, probably even at the school that you might have went to. I went to, like, some of the more, I just went to a lot of different schools and I wasn't allowed to talk about certain things. So it's great to know that's changed for folks.
Oh, most definitely. That's so interesting, that you could talk about one thing but not the other. And it's in that sense of like, oh, we just, we want to make sure that we're, protecting everyone and morals and things like that. And it's like today, it's like, no, we do exist. There are queer people. You know,
Right,
we're
right.
here. Hmm.
And
How
like,
interesting.
right. Well, and with your experience as a younger person, do you think that was related to I know you identify as, she, they, you mentioned that earlier, that
Hmm. Hmm.
so do you feel like that your makeup expression of that was about your sexual orientation or more of your gender, or what was your experience with that at that time of your life?
At that time of my life, it was definitely more about my gender, but I didn't know it.
Mhm.
And it was about trying to hide the gender that I was assigned by society and, by the binary understanding, which was I got, M for male. Um, and it was about hiding it. It's that dysphoria I think that we all experienced.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh gosh, I have to cover this 5 o'clock shadow because I was, 12, 13, 14. That's still pretty young. And then hitting puberty, you're just like, oh my goodness, it's mortifying. So it was about hiding that and feeling the way that I felt inside. I just didn't know that it was about my gender because, growing up Mexican with immigrant parents and not a lot of resources, that's not something that I knew existed. I didn't know that there was something that I could identify with, and
Mhm.
it took, until my, until my college years for me to understand and learn about that there was somewhere that I fit and that what I was doing back then was okay. And it was really liberating because it almost feels like I had to conform afterwards. So I stopped wearing makeup and, doing all of that once I got into high school because I
Mhm.
was more accepted as male mask presenting. Obviously, I still didn't act like it or sound like it like I do right now. She was still trying to be as femme as she could, even with being male presenting and being binary presenting. Um, and it's been a gift to come back to it today. So I'm glad that it happened the way that it did because I wouldn't be so sure of my gender identity today and of who I am today. So I'm
Mhm.
grateful for it.
Yeah, yeah, I totally relate to that. I feel like I knew I was effeminate and all these sorts of things, and I thought that meant that I was gay, like I was a gay man, and like being a
Mhm.
gay man, then I could be more effeminate and have these sorts of things. And
Mhm.
a lot of it
Mhm.
was is I just had no context. I didn't know. And because I think I lived in that gay box for so long, it didn't really allow me to, or because I saw myself as that gay man, I didn't quite go there in like my gender expression. And I just couldn't go there because I was stuck in that box that even wasn't straight. It was still just not, it wasn't, yeah, box. It wasn't the right box, I guess.
It was a box of limited accessories that we just could not use.
Yes,
To put
totally.
it in like a fun term. I agree. It's so funny because when I talk about my spirituality and just like the things that I deal with that, I've struggled with in the past that haven't kept me sober, it's also a box. So yes, it is the box of gay cis maleness that we could not get out of. See, box right there. Um, and I felt the same way, and it was so limiting. And sometimes, especially right now, since I'm just starting, the magical process of being from presenting on the outside, it still feels limiting because
Mhm.
people don't see the way that I feel on the inside, and some people, assume my pronouns are the he him. So that box is real. Yes, no more boxes. I agree. I agree, Veronica. Throw the box away.
Throw the boxes out, right? Yeah, because I
Yeah.
mean, because even just taking on that non-binary or even trans, like I was listening to someone on TikTok today that was talking about that. It's like, oh, I started out identifying as non-binary, and then I felt like I had to, like I had to be androgynous or I had to be this or that I couldn't just, and it didn't feel comfortable again because they were just putting on kind of what they thought they were supposed to
Right.
in order to be in that box.
Right. And I think that's sort of the magical part of it too, and the liberating part of it all is that um, we also have that ability to be so fluid. And I think spiritually, that's what I've been working with more is more on the inside versus um, the accessibility that one would have to medications to help us on the outside, right?
Hmm.
And of course, that's a part that I'm exploring too right now. Girl
Yeah.
hasn't still not gone and done her blood work, so you know,
Yeah.
it's been a prolonged process because of scheduling things, but that's I'm very grateful that we have those opportunities to also medically, transition and feel the way or look the way we feel on the outside as well.
Right. Someone said to me something about like life on life's terms, like life's time. I think somebody said that to me just about an hour ago. Wasn't that you about like timing?
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Veronica says, it's a shame we do it or feel we have to, even among our own circles. Oh, Lord.
Agreed. Mhm.
Right? It's like just because we're part of that LGBTQIA plus bigger box, there's still, there's the assumption that we all get and understand like one another, but it just doesn't quite work like that.
Yeah, and that's the point where we don't have to prove any of it to our community, or to anyone, as long as we're affirming with our pronouns and ensuring our close loved ones that matter are identifying us with those pronouns and with those identities that we have expressly wanted. I think being at peace with that is also it breaking out of that box too. It's looking at the things that we at least have now. Like I'm grateful, like for example, with you, Bonnie Violet, I'm so grateful for you because you see me as I am. You see me as I have, asked to be seen. And to me, that's so affirming and has filled like me like with so much love and validation
Mm,
because you're a sister, you're a
yeah.
sibling, exactly what it's like. We got each other. And
Yeah.
that is what we call community.
Yes, yes, and I mean, I feel the same way about you because I feel like we do hold a lot of the same not fucking boxes. We we, uh, we hang out in a lot of the same places and are attracted to a lot of the same things and present ourselves
Yeah.
in similar ways, and in Idaho, which I think was really important for me because I think I had to leave Idaho in order to, like, have the experience that you're having with it, and I get so much inspiration from you as well, and knowing you just I don't know, it just, I know I get it is all I'm saying. It's like we're doing that for each other, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I will say just the fact that, that like, Boise is like where you feel like I know we talked about this, and I hope it's okay that
Yeah.
but it's like you feel like you have like a pull or a calling to be here, as a trans person, as a queer person, as a spiritual ally, and advocate. I feel the same way about the community, and I think that that's what's kept my confidence. And honestly, it's what keeps me I hate using this word, but I can't think of anything. Keeps me so brave, I guess,
Mhm.
because like, oh, you're so brave.
I know, right? It's like
Because
we can
I think
say it, just don't say it to us, right?
right, yeah. But it's what keeps me, confident and feeling sure when I walk out the door in, my crop top and booty shorts and my heels and, my wing and girl needs a set of acrylic long nails. But,
Mm,
when I get those, it's feeling my femme. Um, and it's because of my spiritual fitness. I
yeah,
think that's what's really cultivating that and having a connection to, a higher power of my own choosing has been what's been keeping me feel sane. And I think that's what's so important about spirituality is what I appreciate, about the work that you're doing is that that is something really important as a queer person to have because it keeps us balanced. It's good for our mental health. And when you connect with a community that, of spiritual artists and queerlings that also feel the same way, um, and we can't do it alone, right?
Right,
We need
right.
community.
Can you talk a little bit, because I know you talked about leaving kind of the Catholic Church and not fitting in there. What kind of brought you back, or when did you start, I guess, living in a spiritual way or find spiritual community, however way you want to frame that?
Yeah, of course. So it's been a journey. I, had a struggle with alcoholism and with, using other fun substances. I think, I think it's part of our community, to go out and party and have a good time and, experiment with drugs and alcohol. There's no shaming, our community for doing that. It's a part of it. And I had hit a point where I was sort of using it too much and was actually suppressing all of the things that I had experienced when I was younger with, expressing myself with makeup and being okay with my feminist and being, not knowing exactly where I belonged on the gender on the gender like spectrum, right? And it was a difficult struggle. So I had to really find a group of spiritual people that supported each other. And I was able to find that community and I found, sobriety. So I have been sober a little over 3 years. So, and it'll be 4 years in November. Thank
Congrats,
you. I appreciate it.
congrats.
Snaps for me. And using the spiritual principles that I thought that I discovered and learned from this this community that supports each other and keeps each other sober from drugs and alcohol has been my saving grace. It's what's kept me sober, and part of it is also helping others, being of service to the entire community um, with what we've learning what we've used, those principles that we've used, and that has been probably the biggest gift is to get out of my own head and to help a fellow queer person that's struggling with life.
Mhm.
Um, it's so interesting because we were talking about it yesterday. We had a gathering, and it's about leading by example. And so, fun fact, and I think I've told you this: I did not start doing drag until I got sober.
Mm.
A year into sobriety was when I started doing drag because I had one of my best friends, who I consider my drag mom, uh, push me into it. Like, just do it. I think you should do it. And it was just it was just magic. I found a confidence, I found a power within myself in this character that, actually eventually became and is now a huge part of who I am. It's
Mhm.
giving me my preferred name, which is, Frida, and it's giving me my gender identity. I discovered that, I am trans feminine, and that this is the way that I wanted to present myself with the world, um, and that's how I found this spirituality. I practice things daily in order to keep fit. A
Mhm.
lot of meditation. Um, I work with other people in my community that are needing some spiritual guidance, and I have literature that I read to keep spiritually fit, and yeah, it's been really magical.
Mhm.
It's been a wonderful journey, and it's brought me so many gifts. Like being a drag performer and my new friends that I have, like you, that have just been such big blessings in life. I hope
Mhm.
that made sense.
Yeah, I think it did, and, like, just to, like, I guess, frame that, or my other question kinda was that you were basically saying that, like, out of your spirituality, because of your spirituality, you were able to begin to do drag. You were able to then be able to like come to understand your identity as you see it today. And that was kind of birthed out of a spiritual experience for you.
Hmm. Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
That's
Yep.
awesome because I think a lot of the times we hear like we sometimes hear the opposite where people might feel like they can do drag, but because of their spirituality, they can't do drag or they have to lose their spirituality or whatever. But for you, it seems like it was all kind of in alignment.
Yes. If I didn't have my sense of spirituality that I have today or that I developed, yeah, this wouldn't be a thing for me. And I can't, and it's hard to imagine now. I'm like,
Mhm.
gosh, if I wouldn't have taken these steps to, you know, sit with the universe and have a reliance upon that little butterfly feeling that comes from my heart. I Yeah, which is my spirituality. I wouldn't be where I am today.
Mhm.
And that's just, yeah, I don't regret the way that anything, happened. I'm glad that it happened the way that it did. So it's really rad. I think it's
Yeah.
wonderful. Did
Yeah.
you
Well, and I
agree?
think
It's just like, ugh.
yes, and I mean I had a very similar experience to you as well, but I guess and I think it's obvious to tell, like people listening to you for the first time and you talking about your story, it's easy to tell that your spirituality is something you're rooted from. And I was curious if you want to talk a little bit more. I know your spirituality is kind of rooted around sobriety and it's built all these sorts of things, but I think sometimes it's so easy to think about, well, what's your religion or your dogma or what would you how would you label or if you labeled your spirituality or God? I heard you use universe, like you
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So honestly, I base it off a lot of my on my Catholic upbringing. So, I remember, I sat with sort of my mentor that helped me find my spirituality, and they had me write down, okay, what is your higher power? What is your God? You know, let's come up with some things that we can think about. And for now, to start off, this is what you're going to rely on. So I said, okay. So we sat there. This is at the Flying M coffee shop in Boise. To give you
Mhm.
an idea, I've done a lot of all my good thinking, and like
Yeah.
all my good spiritual things happen there. I was like, okay, well, I wanted to be my community, so I wrote down my community, the LGBTQ plus people, um, and then some reasons, right? So I'm like, okay, to be a better advocate for my community and defend, their their human rights and freedom, and that's what I started off with, and then it turned into, um, a feminine energy up in the sky. I use
Mm.
La Virgen de Guadalupe, which I am sure a lot of my Latinx queer people are familiar with, who is, who is a saint that, we pray towards. The story about her is that there was an indigenous man named Juan Diego, that discovered her image or her appearance up in a mountain up in a part of like Aztec Mexico at the time, and she was just this magical appearance, and you know was so beautiful, and was just everyone was just dumbfounded when she appeared, and he went down to like the village and was telling everybody about it, but no one believed him.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, like, her like a picture of her, and I'm sure everyone knows what she looks like. She's got the green robe, and there's like an angel below her, and she's brown and beautiful. And she appeared on his, I believe on his like robe, because in all the stories and all the pictures they have of the story, he's wearing white, and she magically appeared on him, and everyone was like, oh wow, like she wasn't lying.
Mhm.
And Juan Diego, that's who we're talking about, she.
Right.
And everyone was like, "Oh my goodness, like you're right, like she's real." And my mom has a huge reliance on our Virgen Morena, and I use her as my spiritual guide. I use her because she's indigenous and brown, and
Mhm.
I trust anything indigenous and brown, and because she was a woman.
Yeah.
I believe that my higher power is a feminine energy. I believe that women are the vessel of life and of all things wonderful. Um, And the people that have given me my rights and freedoms have been trans women of color and women of
Mhm.
color, and any femme presenting, individual that had it a lot harder than I definitely did today, especially growing up in Boise, Idaho.
Right,
You would
right.
think it would be harder, but it was pretty easy here.
Mm.
So I pray to her. That is what I focus on. That's what I use. And I pray for other people. I never pray for selfish things. Prayer is a big part of it. I know it's crazy. A lot of people are like, "Ooh, queer people don't pray. We pray to Beyonce." I'm like, well, you can do that too.
Right.
But that is one of the things that that's what my God is. And also sometimes it's literally just this bright flicker of rainbow color light in the sky. It can be whatever you want it to be.
Mhm.
If I don't overthink exactly what my higher power is, the day gets better. So
Right.
does that answer your question?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
it
it's
totally
like it's so many things.
No, it was great, and I totally relate to what you said too. So it sounded like you initially kind of developed like principles or like a way of life, like a better way of life, or maybe a
Mhm.
higher calling, if you will, and then that led you to Guadalupe. Was Guadalupe part of your like childhood too, or was this a new person in your life, a new deity?
She was a part of my childhood. So Catholic religion is very has her how do I say this? Oh, words English. Um, the Mexican Catholic religion uses her a lot in the biblical stories and in the teachings when you go to church.
Mhm,
We talk about her, and usually, and if there is a Catholic church that holds services for Hispanic Spanish speaking individuals, there will be a giant portrait of her on the wall, and it is beautiful. And
mhm,
so, yes, it was a huge part of my childhood because my mom had pictures of her on the wall. I had, till this day, I have a gold chain necklace with her, a little like medallion with her in it. It's very detailed. So, and we have the candles, with her on them. So it's a huge part of my childhood. Huge.
yeah, that's awesome.
Hmm.
And how does your spirituality relate to your drag? Or what does
Ooh,
drag do for you? Yeah.
what does drag do for me, and how does my spirituality relate to it? Um, so if I could describe it, it would just be, there's just this energy, this magic of this fire that we literally all have in our heart. And I mean, I believe that like help me out here because you went to school a lot longer than I did. But our heart beats like because of like like I don't know, magnetic energy, right?
Mm,
That we have some kind of power running through our body that's making our heart beat, making our blood flow. And when I am in face, when I am in drag, when I'm blonde, long hair Frida, it is like I have transported into another dimension, and I am with my spiritual power
mm,
that I'm honestly just not with on the daily, presenting as regular little short hair femme Frida, right? I
mhm,
mean, I find it there once in a while. She's there most of the time, but it fills me with that energy, and I'm even more confident. I'm even more vocal. I'm even more powerful, and I feel stronger. So that's how I feel when I get into drag. And
mhm.
it actually comes out in my performances. Not to brag, but she's a dancing queen and a trick queen for a
Yes.
reason.
Mhm.
I couldn't do the things I do when I'm, not in face that I do when I'm on stage. Sometimes I'll sit there and I'll like watch a video and I'm like, "Oh gosh, is that really me?"
Mm. Yeah,
So
you're
it's just,
amazing.
"Oh, stop it. You're amazing too."
No, like, in different I ain't gonna be dancing like you dance and you perform, it's just like, it's just I'm really impressed, every time I see you. And I know what you're talking about, like, I feel like people can see that and feel that, like that there's something within you that's feeding, that's feeding that or whatever, like, and it's coming out. And I think that comes out on the audience and the folks that, get to meet you, whether it is in your everyday Frida or even in your drag persona.
Yeah, and I think that it's like that for all performers. So that's what I feel spiritually when I'm in drag. And yeah, it's indescribable. And what has my spirituality done for my drag, right? That was the other part of the question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it has given me the ability to share that love and that vulnerability to tell the story. Um, you know, I'm sure we can all agree, we do it for sometimes we do it for the gig and because the money's good, right? But for me, being on stage and performing is so much more than that. It's about sharing a story and making everyone else feel those emotions and that pain. Or I remember when we did the the fundraiser show for the harm reduction project here in Boise at the balcony. I believe that you were there.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of those performances, I was able to share my pain on stage with a song and with movement, and people got it.
Yeah.
So that's what it's really done for my drag. It's taken it to another level, um, to where the performance is really good. I don't think I
Mm-hmm.
would be a good drag performer if I wasn't spiritual.
Right,
Um,
right. How
yeah.
Well, how
Go ahead.
could you maybe share another kind of drag experience? Like, because I've seen it or maybe I've heard it, but I sense that like doing drag can help you work through some of your like just life shit. Is there any
Yeah.
performance or thing that kind of comes to mind with you in thinking about that?
Yes, there's a couple performances. So one of the first performances that I can think of was it was during Boise's Next Dark Superstar. It's a competition that I recently won. Um, we had to do it was the second week and we had to do a pride theme number, and what comes to the top of a performer's head for a pride theme, drag number, it's like, I'm gonna do Born This Way, we're gonna do some Cher,
Right.
Life After Love and Madonna and all the gay things that
Right.
we grew up with, right? um and that didn't come to my head when we thought about that. I actually, um, very recently, back in December, my one of my mom's ex partners that I grew up with that raised me, my other mom, passed away from cancer,
Mm.
and it was a difficult situation because we weren't able to grieve her and provide sort of the funeral service that a queer person would deserve. It was a little bit different, and we didn't have a lot of the how do I say? We couldn't do a lot of things for her because of family restrictions and legal restrictions that we didn't have, and it was a
Mhm.
really difficult loss. Um, it was a beautiful, experience, to see her peacefully go. I was present, and I said I didn't get to really do anything for her, to commemorate her in a queer way, because a queer way is very important to do things. Um,
Mhm.
and I did, and so what I did is I actually put together a slideshow and a video, um, and dedicated a performance to her for that number in the competition. I made a dress out of the lesbian pride flags. So
Mhm.
I turned it into a long skirt that hit the floor, and I did it to a song by Brandy Carlisle. um, and it was a really beautiful performance, and just I felt her presence there, and it was spiritual in a way that I was able to share my grief with the audience, but I
Mhm.
was also able to share the joy that comes in celebrating the life of someone, even though they're
Mhm.
gone and even though it was really difficult to lose them. And I
Right.
think that's that's so important to know as a spiritual person, because we have to know that they lived a happy life, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So there was that
And
performance.
Right. And really
Go ahead.
celebrating the parts of her that were important, but like you said, kind of would have gotten washed away or not talked about in other settings.
Exactly. And for me, it was like she was a very, very proud lesbian woman.
Mhm.
Um, and she lived a very happy life. So that was one of the performances. And then in the same competition, I did my final performance, which was to like a really cool remix of Deep Row Love by Aretha Franklin.
Mm.
And the reason that I did that song was because every time I hear that song, something in the lyrics just opens up my spiritual like cage within my chest and just brings this like energy and this light. And when I performed that song, I felt like I just traveled into a whole another dimension and was like
Mm.
a super almighty like drag queen superhero. It was a super powerful performance too. I've never flipped my hair and gyrated like that in my entire
Oh,
life.
wow. That's hard to believe
Um,
because I've seen you do all that.
yeah, yeah, you have, and it was like, it was a lot, and I remember I was like crying during the performance too, but no one could tell. Thank God,
Mhm.
when I was crying because it was just like my final like hoorah of like this is my celebration of my drag and
Mhm.
of what it has done for me in my life. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, and I usually keep this around 45 minutes and we're around like 42 minutes or so. I want to, I know, right? It went kind of fast. But
yeah.
I want to give you an opportunity to speak about anything maybe that we haven't spoken about yet, or you want to speak more on. The floor is yours to do with what you'd like.
Well, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Um, let's see. What else would I want to talk about? Oh, gosh, putting me on the spot like that. Um, I guess it would be that, well, one, there is a queer community in Boise, Idaho. For those that are, watching from other parts of the country, there is one here. We are facing a lot of difficult things. There's been a lot of legislative attacks, on trans people here that have been difficult, especially, children that, are, transitioning at an early age. There's been policies put in place for them not to be allowed to play sports in school due to their gender identity or their, and it's been really hard. um, we are taking action. Politically, we're making sure that our people are going out to the polls and voting. But we do exist, and
Hmm.
in a weird way, we're flourishing. We
Yeah.
are, we are making it. Bonnie Violet, you being one of those individuals,
Mhm.
um, and it's probably the most beautiful, community that I've ever known. Um, and I love it so much. People always my family's always just like, "You need to come to Portland, you need to come to Washington, you need to move to a bigger city," and I'm just like, "I have to be here. I have
Mm.
to be here for these people because, they still need me."
Mm.
Especially with last Pride, and you were there. I was in
Yeah.
LA, but you remember what happened with all the corporate sponsors that pulled out because of the Drag Kids show.
Hmm.
Um, and just how I remember Denim Kane, one of our local drag queens, she like sent out a message and everyone got together that Friday night, to be present um, by the main stage. And I believe that they did bring up the kids on the
Yeah.
main stage. I think it was on Saturday, and they were like, "These are the drag kids that were supposed to perform for you," and wanted to show their art. It's so important for people to understand that queer people and drag people are all the magic and good. We are
Mm.
here to make magic and to let people know that it is okay to be who you are. And no one, no one person or no league like political policy will ever change that. Even though we should still fight against them very strongly, we are
Right.
still here and we're still queer and we can still be who we are. So
Mm. Very
we're
well said. Very well said. And how can folks reach out to you if they'd like to send you a message or connect with you off, I guess, off of out of this box?
Oh, wonderful. So you can follow me on Instagram my my handle is at Frida Nightz with a Z at the end, and you can also find me on Facebook, Frida Nightz with a Z at the end. And yeah, you can instant message me or you can DM me. I will reply. I love meeting new people, even if it's virtually.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And folks, you can find their contact information in the description as well, whether you're watching this on YouTube or Twitch, or you're listening to us on a podcast. However way you're listening to us, we're just glad that you're here with us. Thanks so much, Donna Vasquez. Donna Vasquez says, thank you for being in Boise.
Hi, Donna. Thank you.
She's
I
an
love
icon.
you.
She's an icon. Yes.
She is an icon.
Yes, love
Goals.
that.
She's goals. She's goals.
Yeah. Beautiful, stunning, smart, like all the things. So
All the things.
Idaho's lucky to have her.
Agreed.
For sure. All right. Well, thanks so much, Frida, and thanks everyone who joined us tonight. Join me on Sunday the 2nd at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time as we talk about Just in Case, or join us next Wednesday, same time, same place, as we speak with Veronica Electronica from Nashville, Tennessee. And because we're just a busy week, join us at the Dragon Spirituality Summit that is taking place in person in Chicago. If you can be there in person, rad. If you can be there virtually, that's rad too. So go to dragonspirituality.com to get connected there. Take care and have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.